gmail.com.
We must wage what I have called total war against public enemy number one.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
That marijuana, pot, grass, whatever you want to call it, is probably the most dangerous drug.
Some think there won't be room for them in jail. We'll make room.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it and didn't inhale.
And one major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
Radical Rant.
Welcome back, everyone. 46 and a half after the hour. And today for the rant, I want to do a compare and contrast on two states that are huge states population-wise, two states that are tipping point states when it comes to marijuana reform, and two states that are hugely vital in the 2016 presidential election. Those states would be California and Ohio. And my question today is, who will snafu 2016 worse? If you don't know, snafu is an acronym from World War II that means situation normal all fouled up. And that's been a situation in California since 1996. California's been a snafu when it comes to legalization ever since medical marijuana passed. And to their credit, the activists in California passed a medical marijuana law that was so wide open that it is effectively a quasi sort of legalization in some places in the state. I won't pretend that it's perfect. Obviously, places in the Inland Empire, around Fresno, all sorts of places are Orange County, very conservative, and have banned medical marijuana grows and all sorts of cultivation rules. I mean, Fresno doesn't let you grow a plant in any way whatsoever, so it's not perfect. But to a large extent, many people in California must feel like it's legal already. There are pot shops everywhere they go. People can possess marijuana. It's decrimmed up to an ounce, so you don't have that fear for being busted for low-level possession. So the situation in California is the fact that we've got so many groups that are fighting for legalization. So many that they had to put together a council, kind of a collaborative effort to try to get these groups together to decide how they want to move forward on one united front to end marijuana prohibition in 2016. And 2016 is the big year for legalization. It's the big presidential election year. Both parties are running primaries, right? Because, you know, we got a two-term presidents on the out, so there's somebody new who's going to be in the Oval Office. Maybe not a new last name. It might be a Clinton or a Bush again, but still, at least we're having elections again. And California is going to be huge. They're not going to be able to deny the arguments about legalization or medical marijuana when they're fighting for California. So the problem in California is that you have all these groups, and it's a question of whether or not they can get all on the same page. And the big player in all this, the 800-pound gorilla, is the medical marijuana industry. And to some extent, the people that are already benefiting from medical marijuana, the patients, the people, the consumers that are already getting marijuana through storefronts. One problem is that among all the groups that are fighting for marijuana legalization, you have what I call true believers. That would be the California Cannabis Hemp Initiative, the so-called Jack Herer Initiative. Now, I've said this many times in the past that if it were up to me, and I could put it on the ballot, and I could ensure that it passes, the California Cannabis Hemp Initiative is something that I would support. Absolutely. It allows people to grow a whole lot of plants, possess a whole lot of weed, keeps the taxes low, releases all the pot prisoners, and so forth. The problem, though, is that I don't get to wave a magic wand. And I don't get to ensure that a majority of the people are going to see things the way I see them. Now, the California Cannabis Hemp Initiative, the CCHI, have been fighting election cycle after election cycle after election cycle to try to get their language even on the ballot, even to collect enough signatures, and have never raised the money or had the professional staff to pull it off. It's just a fact. And that's not to be mean. And that's not to dismiss the activism of the people involved with it, who are very, very erstwhile and dedicated and altruistic about this. But there's a political naivete there. If you don't have the money, especially in a state like California, you're not going anywhere. So the question is, can all these other groups coalesce around one shared vision of what marijuana legalization can be? Can they bring the true believer CCHI people on board with it, or will they reject it as not being, quote, true legalization, and cause a schism within our community as we need to be united to move forward? Is California going to end up like it did in Prop 19 in 2010, finding the Northern California growers and the established medical marijuana businesses openly campaigning against legalization? Will the coalition in California have to move forward with a legalization plan that's amenable more to law enforcement and soccer moms, partially because they're going to lose part of their base no matter what they do? So it's an interesting situation that we're looking at in the state of California. Now, in the state of Ohio, kind of a similar situation, but a little different. Ohio is a big electoral state. It's the 7th largest state by population, so it's very important presidential election-wise. It's also a state that has decriminalization. In fact, the greatest amount of decriminalization in the United States, 100 grams, about 3.5 ounces, only gets you a ticket in the state of Ohio. Non-criminal infraction. So again, kind of like California, you have a situation where you don't have that card to play of people who are just simply possessing, going through all sorts of terrible life problems because it's been decriminalized. But unlike California, we do not have a medical marijuana system. We don't have a medical marijuana system in Ohio to deal with. And so the big fight that's going on right now, the 800-pound gorilla in the room in Ohio, is this group, Responsible Ohio, the cartel grow monopolists that are proposing a constitutional cartel monopoly of 10 growers, the same 10 wealthy individuals who are funding the initiative. Folks, it's not an initiative. As John Pardee said on the show yesterday, it's not an initiative, it's a business plan. It has very little to do with rights. It has a lot to do with profits. Now, to be fair, if Responsible Ohio does make the ballot, it would at least legalize possession, and it would legalize pot stores. And any Ohioan could open a pot store or a processing store or a processing facility or a testing facility. They just couldn't open a grow. And individual Ohioans wouldn't be able to grow their own either. Now, like California, in addition to the 800-pound gorilla in the room, there are other groups, multiple, that are working on various forms of reform in Ohio. You've got Responsible Ohioans for Cannabis, which would be the Ohio version of the Jack Herer initiative. Again, well-meaning people, true believers, with a maximum amount of cannabis freedom spelled out in their amendment. But again, very little money and a little bit of political naivete in trying to reach so far for so much in a state that hasn't even passed medical yet. Then you've got John Pardee and the Ohio Rights Group, and then you've got, there's two other groups, and I don't remember their names off the top of my head. But again, like California, multiple groups, except a slight difference in Ohio is they're just trying to decide, should we go for full legalization or go for medical or go for a CBD oil or something like that. It is incumbent on the reformers in Ohio, if they want to get something on the ballot and get it passed, and they don't want it to be Responsible Ohio, then those four other groups must coalesce around a common plan. Any one of the four of them do not have enough mojo to pull this off. They do not have enough money, enough volunteers, enough public support by themselves. So if Ohio wants something other than Responsible Ohio, I would call on all these members of all these other groups to have some sort of powwow and to decide how to move forward as a united front. And assuming they don't, or assuming they do and are unsuccessful, and assuming that Responsible Ohio does get on the ballot, I know this is going to break some hearts, but folks, if it gets on the ballot, you need to support it. I know, a lot of people are like, what? It's got no home grow, Russ. It sets up a constitutional monopoly. Once it's legal, nobody will be able to home grow, and we'll have to change our constitution in order to be able to home grow. It's terrible. And I agree. Do everything you can in the run-up to getting something on the ballot to stop this thing. Do everything you can to get some competing proposal on the ballot. Absolutely. But once that season is over, and if the only thing left standing is Responsible Ohio's initiative, then folks, got to hold your nose and vote for it. I mentioned this on the rant yesterday. Anything that ends cannabis contraband is worth supporting. Not having home grow is not enough of a deal breaker. Once you get your right to possess cannabis, and once we are no longer criminals, fighting for any other right becomes immensely easier. Immensely. Now I know people say, well, Russ, they'll have this 10 grower cartel monopoly and they're going to fight everything they can to prevent people from being able to do their own home grow or to be able to open up their own commercial grows. Yeah, they will. You'll have to fight against 10 business interests. Won't that be easier than fighting against the entire law enforcement community, the entire state government, and every law written in the books? I think it will be. I don't like having to vote for things that don't have home grow. Hell, I didn't like having to vote for 502 that had the 5 nanogram per se DUI. But at the end of the day, you got to ask yourself, what is this all about? What does legalization really mean? And to me, it means ending the punishment of people who use marijuana. Secondarily, ending the punishment of people who grow marijuana. But there are far more consumers than growers. And once those consumers are legal, their right to grow is undeniable. And we will see those laws change very quickly. But it's going to be a lot easier to pull that off as a legal consumer than a dope smoking criminal. Much easier. Hey folks, that's all the time we got for Hour 1, but stay tuned. Hour 2 Toker Talk Radio is coming up next. We'll talk more about the stories of the day. We'll take your calls at 971-533-7111. For everyone here at Rolla J Studios, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you